So this is Cherry Springs 2023, and I'm here with Adam Toder. Adam Toder is a veteran of Cherry Springs. I mean, he is here every time I've been up here. And how long have you been coming, Adam?
I've been coming since about 2017. So it's been 7-8 years, give or take.
You used to tent, right?
Used to tent, loved every second of it. Then after a few years, decided it was time to change things a little bit and get something with a wall and some heat and whatnot. But no matter if it's tent or an RV, I just love being here.
Yeah, it is really beautiful. I know my wife and I, last year when we were here Sunday, so everybody was gone. We were like, you know what, why are we in the city? It made a huge impact on our lives because we moved to the country because of coming to Cherry Springs. But
yeah, it's just great being here. Even if it's cloudy, you know, it's just a beautiful place. The fresh air, the chirping birds, you know, you're in a beautiful location, like-minded individuals, and it's just nice and peaceful and relaxing.
Yeah. We've had an F-16 going overhead a few times, but you know, that's about it. Yeah. So how long have you been taking multiple cameras or scopes here?
Probably since 2018. You know, it got to the point where I started figuring out how much more efficient it was being at a dark site versus being in my light polluted home, you know, 20 miles west of Manhattan under that light dome. And about 1 hour of imaging time here is equivalent to about 25 or 30 hours of imaging time at home. So I started doing the math and I'm like, well, if 1 hour is 30, well then 2 hours is 60, and you start playing that game. And I went from 1 rig to 2, and 2 to 3, and 3 to 4.
How long have you been running 4? Because I think you've always run 4 when I've been here.
Yeah, I've probably been running 4 rigs here for the better part of 3 or 4 years now. Yeah, different focal lengths, different rigs. Everything from, you know, a 50 millimeter lens up to 1675 millimeters and everything in between.
Now, what about your processing? Do you try to process it all here before you go home, or do you go home and process?
Oh no, this place is just for data acquisition. Image processing is for home, on a rainy day, on a cloudy day, you know, when you have nothing else to do. When I'm here, I just want to enjoy being here. I don't want to be on the computer. You know, I work here a lot of the time when I come during the day. So the last thing I want to do is be on a computer processing stuff after working all day. So when I'm here, it's all about, you know, the camaraderie, the social aspect of it, getting the data, talking to people, geeking out on everyone's gear. And I save the processing for home. Yeah.
I kind of feel the same way. Like, as a matter of fact, like 2 months ago, I was showing at the club pictures that I took Cherry Springs last year, because that's when I finally got around to processing them.
Yeah, no, it's the truth. And you know, sometimes, you know, I try and come up as many new moons as possible. You know, if you have a good trip, sometimes you're still processing data just up until you travel to the next new moon from the prior new moon, you know, and I like that.
Now, will you come here if there's snow on the ground?
I've been here with snow on the ground. I drove up a few years ago during Mother's Day weekend, and there was 3 inches of snow on the ground. And you never know what you get here. You know, the microclimate here is its own unique thing. But I've been here with snow. I've been here with 50-mile-an-hour winds. I've been here in lightning storms. And I've been here on some of the most beautiful nights that I've ever had under dark skies.
All right, so here, we're going to go in the next video and we're actually take a look at a lot of his equipment, because he's got 4 scopes here, and we'll kind of run down each one and maybe talk about why you built each one and kind of what goes into it. So I'm here with Adam, and now he's got 2 identical scopes, and I've always been an advocate, if you're really heavily interested in photography, you should have 2 identical cameras. So 2 identical scopes. This is wisdom.
Well, it goes back to getting as much data as you can in a finite amount of time. I put together these systems to go after a target that I've been after for a long time. I went after it with imperfect equipment, and I really wasn't satisfied with it. So I decided to go with more aperture, mono filters, mono camera, and really hit it hard. So I put together these 2 systems to do that. They're basically identical in every way, except one system has a 5-way filter wheel, the other one has a 7-way filter wheel, but otherwise identical filters, cameras, scopes, guide cameras across the board. Yeah.
Now, let's see, I see ASI Air Pro. What guide camera is that?
This one I believe is the ASI 224 MC. So actually this guide camera might be slightly different than that one. I think that's the 178 and that's the 224. Color, this is a color guide camera. The other one's a mono guide camera, so slightly different. I know you should guide with mono, but that doubles as a planetary camera for me for when I decide to do planetary on the very rare occasion.
Yeah, I know the 178 is the one that I've always kind of pushed to people, although we'll see if I like the 220 that I just got.
Yeah, nice. Nice. I've heard good things about it.
Yes. Now, tell me about scope. You run a focal reducer?
Yeah, field flattener focal reducers. So these are StellarView SVR 90Ts. So it's 90 millimeter aperture, native f7, but the flattener reducer takes it down by 0.8 to f5.6. So this is, I believe, 502 millimeter focal length after reduced. Yeah, after being reduced. Okay. Yeah.
Carbon fiber tubes, they're pretty lightweight?
Lightweight, holds focus really well. Another big advantage. I love carbon fiber. Most of my scopes have been carbon fiber for the most part. I've considered trading in one of my scopes for a carbon fiber one just because I do like it that much, but I haven't done that yet. But yeah, carbon fiber, lighter, and also, you know, I take that into consideration because I fly with these, and I've had both of these rigs down at the Winter Star Party as recently as a few months ago, so they're very easy because of their weight and their size to fly with them.
Now, when you fly with these, do you get everything from both scopes into one case, or are they each in their own case?
They're each in their own case. I can get the mounts and the tripods into one case. I can mail them a lot easier too because they're lighter. I think I actually mailed these scopes this particular trip and flew with the mounts this particular trip. But, you know, the lightweight, the carbon fiber, you know, keeping focus better, just a lot of advantages.
I know, like, we're out in the sunlight right now. Have you tried any solar astrophotography with these?
I have not. You know, that's one thing. I tried astrophotography, or solar astrophotography, years ago, and for whatever reason it just never grabbed me. You know, this hobby, there's a million and one ways to enjoy the hobby, and there's no right and there's no wrong way. Whatever gets you out and gets you doing the hobby is fantastic, but it just never resonated with me for whatever reason.
Now, what kind of software did you try to do processing?
PixInsight, completely PixInsight. Yeah, it's stacking, processing, the whole nine. That's my soup to nuts kit that I use. Yeah,
I know, because with planetary astrophotography, the software for stacking it's one of the most lacking areas. You know, it's like if some of the software companies out there could innovate a little bit, please.
Yeah, you know, planetary is such a different game. It's a different set of gear that you need. You know, you have to worry about what is it, focal ratio to pixel size, and you know, it's a different gear, it's different processing, and I've messed around with it over the years, but I probably haven't dabbled in planetary in a solid 4 or 5 years. Yeah, it's all DSO for me.
So how do you like the new AM5s?
I love it. I love it.
You got two.
Yeah. I'm really impressed with the harmonic drives. You know, up until recently, harmonic strain wave drives were a real niche. You know, only a select number of companies had them out there, and their price points were really at a very lofty number. And the AM5 came out, and I was hesitant at first because while I love ZWO, all my cameras are ZWO, I use ASI Airs and, you know, the EIFs and all that, I was hesitant to buy a mount from them because I had never done a mount before. But immediately the feedback on various forums and whatnot was extremely positive. And when I thought about it, I thought about all the advantages of what this kind of mount would have, and I went for it. And I bought one. I was really impressed with the build quality, with the performance. RMS guiding error on this thing is fantastic. And I loved it so much. I got a second one. I replaced a couple of my other mounts that were portable for shorter focal length systems, and I absolutely love it. Yeah.
It was the same for me. Like I watched the forums, and nobody was saying anything bad about them, and
which is rare for any product, you know.
Yeah, and this is ZWO's first launch into a mount, and really, folks, mechanically, like designing a mount is way more than designing a camera, because a camera, there's already a pattern that pretty much everybody could follow. This is a totally new system, and totally different mechanisms involved that are new, and there really aren't like there isn't a blueprint to follow from.
Yeah, true. And I got to tell you, I had both these mounts down at the Winter Star Party in February on the beach, 15, 20 mile an hour winds, and I was getting 0.4, 0.5, 0.6 RMS guiding error with these scopes on it in the wind. And to me, that was like the final, I love you.
Now, how long have you been using the ASI Air?
Pretty much since it came out. I was a very early adopter. I remember seeing it at NEAF. I forget what year at NEAF it was.
2019.
2019, yeah. I remember seeing it and thinking to myself, this is going to change how I do this hobby. And as soon as it came out, I bought version 1 and loved it. And really, I got to be honest, the ASI Air is the reason, and I'm not being paid or anything by ASI, but the ASI Air is really the reason that I'm able to image with multiple mounts the way I do, because it just makes things so easy. It just works. And anything in this hobby that just works, that takes the difficulty or the random problems out of the equation, it's worth its weight in gold. So every rig has their own ASI Air Pro.
Yeah. I know QHY at the same time as ZWO was kind of debuting at that same NEAF,
Right.
their own version.
Right.
And I think a year or two ago I went back and looked at it, and they did nothing with it, which is really a shame because there's no competition.
Yeah.
But still, ZWO has innovated on innovation with it for a long time.
They've been fantastic. The upgrades they do, the software upgrades, while sometimes there have been some bugs here and there early on, they do a ton of software upgrades. The features that it has today compared to the features that it had when it first came out are night and day. Mm-hmm. There's a laundry list of updates that they've done. And their user feedback on various forums, it's very interactive, very helpful. And they've really done a nice job. They've really, I think they have helped revolutionize how a lot of imagers approach this hobby.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to talk about your big scopes next. Okay. Are all of your cameras mono?
All of my cameras here are mono, but I have one color camera at home. Yeah,
right. Yeah. I know. Well, everybody knows I'm a mono fanatic.
Understandably so. Mono. Look, all things being equal, mono, you get better signal, better performance. That being said, you can still do some great imaging with color cameras. I only use that one particular rig now for broadband targets. I don't try narrowband with it at all because I've got 4 other mono cameras much better suited to narrowband. But that other rig, it's an ASI 2600 color with a 135mm lens for nice wide field shots like Rofuki and Iris and.
Yeah. Now I'm curious with this one, because this one, I know this mount has the ability to run power through the mount, but you're not doing that, are you?
No, one of the advantages of the ASI Air is, you run one power cord to the ASI Air box and then distribute it throughout, and you still have, I guess it's the same principle of having all of your power or USBs above the mount, which is in essence what passing through the cables would do anyway. So since I have the Air, I just natively run everything through the air. Makes it easier for me. Yeah.
Now what's the focal length on this guy?
So this guy is 938mm. It's 140mm aperture f6.7, and there's no reducer on this. There's just a flattener. Okay. Yeah.
What kind of filters? What size filters are you running?
2-inch filters. Every single rig has 2-inch filters. I have 2 rigs with the ASI 6200, which is full frame, 2 rigs with the ASI 2600, which is APS-C, but 2-inch filters, even though I can get away with, unmounted 31mm or 36mm, I'm 2-inch filters across the board. Yeah.
I think I'm really tempted by the 2600, so I might go unmounted. I know filters are a big part of this once you go mono, but the rewards are great, because the flexibility.
Yes, 100%. Having a 7-filter wheel on a mono camera lets you just be flexible over the course of the night. If you want to go from a broadband target to a narrowband or vice versa, for whatever reason, you're not sitting there and taking filters out in the dark and fumbling with things in the night. It's the ultimate flexibility. I've just found that mono, for me, is where I've decided to take my gear. For the longest time, I was color, because I feel like color is the natural progression for someone just starting out, moving from a DSLR. You're going from a color system to a color system. But mono, I think, is where most people who image after a long time eventually wind up.
Yeah. Now, What's in each filter slot of your filter wheel? So can you remember 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 around the clock?
Oh yeah, so I'm consistent. You know, it's LRGB SHO. That's just how it goes for me. So I know 1 through 7. That's the order on every single filter wheel, except for the 5 over there. It's LRGB and HA. So I keep it simple on that one.
So I do luminance is my number 1 because a lot of times I focus and do my initial plate solving with that.
Right.
Then I go SHO,
Okay.
and then I go RGB,
Okay.
and then usually my last one is infrared or something like that.
Oh, interesting. I've never thought about infrared.
Well, infrared for like lunar stuff, if I ever wanted to point at that, or there's some sun things that, you know, infrared are good for.
Right. I know some people also put a blocker in there for darks.
I was going to ask if you do that. Yeah.
You know, I don't. I do a dark library at home, you know, for all the various intervals and gain settings, even though 99% of the time I'm imaging with the same singular setting. But I do darks at home. It's one of those things you can do when you're not out in the field, which I like about this hobby. You can still participate in the hobby even though you're not at a dark site like Cherry Springs.
And that, I want to highlight that because like I've seen a lot of guys in the same night, they try to get everything. They try to get their darks, their flats, and their bias frames all done at the same night that they shoot. Don't, you know, do it on a cloudy day at home.
Exactly. Take advantage of the magic while you're there. You know, you're at a dark site. If you have clear skies, if you're fortunate enough to be at a dark site and have clear skies, get those photons while you can. You know, darks you can do at home. Flats you can do during the daytime. You know, bias, I don't even do bias anymore. Some of these CMOS cameras actually perform better, in my opinion, without bias. So, yeah.
Now, with this scope, how long have you had it?
This scope I've had roughly 2 years. This replaced an Explorer Scientific 5-inch carbon fiber.
I remember that, yep.
Yeah, but this replaced that. I love Stellarvue. My first imaging scope was a Stellarvue 70 millimeter SV70T, which I loved. I loved it so much. I got a second one. This so this is so that's actually a very good call. So this is the doublet version of that. I had the triplet to start off. I was told when I moved from visual to imaging, that was the scope that was recommended. So I took this person's advice and ran with it, and I've been in love with Stellarvue. I think they make great product. Really like their gear, and I've had a lot of their scopes. Yeah.
Have you had to like tune it or anything like that? Because I know as you get bigger, this stuff gets much more sensitive.
I haven't touched anything. I haven't tuned anything. You know, I try and, you know, baby the objective, you know, by keeping it relatively clean, you know, with a puffer. Every now and then I'll take the filter wheel, you know, the cover off and puff the filters if I see dust motes in my, you know, in my images. But other than that, I really don't do much. I just try and take care of it when I transport it, when I store it. And I think that just takes care of itself at that point.
Now, I've actually never heard of this brand.
You know, it's not one of the more well-known brands. It's definitely not a big box brand, but they make a really fantastic telescope.
I see like dew heaters are like built into the mirrors and everything, the truss up there.
Yeah, you know, the design of this was really well thought out. They have built-in dew heaters, basically it's a thermal system. There's also built-in fans over here where I can turn a dial and turn fans on to help get the mirror, you know, closer to ambient in a pinch. So it really has some really neat features. You know, AG Optical, which is the brand of the scope, this is an AG Optical Dalkirkham 10-inch. It just ticked off all the boxes that I wanted for my most recent scope.
Now you're going really deep with this guy. What's focal length?
Focal length is 1675 millimeters. It's 10-inch f6.7 native, which is faster than most other folded optical styles out there, like an RC or Schmidt-Cassegrain. And there's no reducer on it, so it's native f6.7.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, so it looks like an RC, but this is not an RC.
It is not an RC. So one of the basic differences between an RC and a Dalkirkham is an RC uses two hyperbolic mirrors. The primary and the secondary are hyperbolic. On the Dahl-Kirkham style of telescope, the primary is an elliptical mirror and the secondary is spherical. So that results in much better on-axis and off-axis performance. So this is able to give me a full-frame image circle, whereas I would say if you were going to use an RC or a Schmidt-Cassegrain and reduce it to get a similar focal ratio, your light cone is probably compromised and you can't get a full-frame image circle. I'm sure there's exceptions to that in certain cases, but that was really something I wanted. I wanted a full-frame image circle.
Yeah, I know, and you've got a nice guide scope.
Yeah, you know, I am very hesitant to go OAG for all the reasons that everyone hates going OAG and all the issues and complexities and whatnot. I have a formula, it works. It's not a formula, but I try and be consistent with everything I do. Same operating system, same brands when possible, and same approach. So I'm very comfortable with the guide scope. And I figured if it's not broke, let's not fix it. And of course, the guide scope is Stellar View, and it's carbon fiber because that's fits my MO. But it also helps reduce weight, you know, especially when you're putting more weight on top of a 32-pound scope already. I wanted to try and be as light as possible, and since the scope was carbon fiber, I felt it was important to have a carbon fiber guide scope.
Now, what was the aperture again on this?
10 inches. Yeah, 10 inches, yeah.
Now, I just noticed, so you run an ASI Air. Yep. It's not a ZWO focuser. Does that run with the ASI Air?
It does not, and that is one drawback that I contend with, is that, you know, I am completely invested in the ASI Air ecosystem. And a drawback of that is certain products are not compatible. So this does have an autofocuser built in. If I was using, you know, Nina or APT or SGP or whatnot, it would be completely compatible with those systems. But it's not compatible with the ASI Air at this point in time. So I just use a bad enough mask, which is super simple. Yeah.
So like throughout the night, focus is consistent? You get to check it much, or?
I check focus with the software several times a night. You know, the carbon fiber system holds focus better than non-carbon fiber systems, all things being equal. I generally will tweak focus once a night. You know, if I'm imaging all night, midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning is when I'll do a fine tuning for those last few hours of the night just to make sure everything's nice and tight.
Yeah. Now, what camera are you running on this guy? It's your full frame, right?
Yeah, this is another full frame. So just like the SVX 140, it's an ASI 6200 mono. This has 2-inch chroma filters, 3 nanometer SHO filters. So I splurged for this system, but I figured if I was going to go all out for everything else, it wouldn't make sense to get crappy filters. So I put some good filters on it. Yeah.
Now, that's your focus controller, right?
That's my focus controller. Yeah. So literally it's just in and out. If you long press, it goes from slow to fast focus.
Okay.
So it's very simple. Works like a lot of other manual focusers out there, and it works well. Holds focus really well.
I gotta say, this thing looks like a beast, and something I'm noticing that I like about this is that these risers here, these attachment points, are lifted off a little bit further from the mirror than I've seen with some of the other RCs that I've seen. You know, some of them are too close, and so you get collision issues.
Yeah, and what's also nice is, you know, the scope natively is 32 pounds. When you have everything on it, it's probably, I would have to guess, over 40 pounds. Being able to grab it on both sides with the sidebars, the side plates, you know, it makes it a lot easier to wield the scope, especially when you're doing it, you know, by yourself. So yeah, that is a nice advantage, and being able to mount things on it is definitely beneficial. Yeah.
Now the 6200, that makes some big files. Are you binning ever, or do you run a native?
No, I run native. Yeah, the subs are about 120 meg, give or take, a piece. So yeah, we're not talking small files. We're not talking small files at all. I have 128 gig memory sticks into the ASI Air, which when needed I dump onto a laptop with backup hard drive. I'm big on redundancy. You know, you take a lot of effort getting to the place, you know, a lot of luck having the weather when you get to the place, and a lot of time and effort. So I'm very careful with my data, and I'm very big on redundancy with it.
Now, what kind of object are you working on with this scope right now?
Right now, believe it or not, it's a target that I wasn't anticipating imaging when I came here. When I came, I was initially going for the antenna galaxies, NGC, 4038, 4039, I believe are the numbers. But just based on what the sky was giving us for the 5 or 6 hours over the last 5 nights that we've had to image, and the parts of the sky that were, that were clear, I decided to go for the Crescent Nebula to get in nice and tight. I've never imaged it as as deep as with this scope, so I decided to go for that. Bubble Nebula is also on my short list. There's a lot of fun galaxies out there which are going to get got eventually, but at the mercy of the clear skies.
How many hours do you typically spend on a target with a camera and setup like this for narrowband and then also for RGB?
Yeah, I these days I try and hit double digits. That's the goal. You can get some great images at Cherry Springs with only a few hours because, again, for me, 1 hour of imaging here is equivalent to 25 or 30 hours imaging at home. So a few hours of data here is like gold. But I still try and, in the quest for ever better data, because it all starts with quality data, I shoot for 10 hours at a minimum, yeah.
Now, how many subs does that work out per channel usually?
I tend to image with 300-second, 5-minute subs. That's pretty much my standard. So, 12 subs an hour, I guess 10 hours, 120 subs. It depends. Sometimes if you're doing HA LRGB, I might add a couple extra hours to get some really good data in the HA channel, like when I did M81 and M82 a few weeks ago when I was here. I think I went 12 or 13 hours, but usually 10 hours is the target for me. Yeah.
I know, because I used to shoot for around 30 subs per channel, but now that I have 3 rigs, and the difficulty is keeping up with those 3 rigs, processing them, I find myself just take more subs and do more integration time and just be pickier, throw out more bad subs.
Yeah, and that's a big part of it, being, having a discerning eye, it pains you to throw away data.
Oh yeah.
It pains you. But, more often than not, the pickier you are, even though it might be less integration time, if it's better data overall, it's going to give you a better image. Yeah.
Now, with something this heavy, okay, you're setting it on the grass.
Right.
Have you noticed you need to give it like settle time at all? Or do you like push down on it to kind of get it to settle into the ground?
Well, I check polar alignment on my rigs every night. Especially the last few nights it's rained, so I will be double checking polar alignment again. Generally, even if it does settle, it's just a minimal tweak here or there. You're already on target. You have to do a little in RA, a little in this. It's not much. It's just a minor tweak and an ounce of prevention. At that point, that's how I look at it. You're here already. Take another couple of seconds, dial in the polar alignment. It's going to help the guiding. It's going to help everything else.
How precise are you with polar alignment? Do you try to get it within like 10 seconds or?
Oh, I try and get it as close to 0 as possible. I'm pretty, I wouldn't say anal, but the ASI routine is pretty simple. The feedback is very robust and quick, and it's a matter of minutes to polar align a rig. So another couple of seconds for one more turn here or one more knob, tweak there. It doesn't take a lot of time to do.
Now, how about the knobs on this mount? Because this is the Ioptron 120. This is their biggest mount. Right. And I see you have the error correction in this too, right?
Yeah, this is the EC2. So this has the encoders on both axes. Yeah.
Now, is there a lot of backlash when you're turning knobs and stuff to get?
Not a ton. What's interesting about the Ioptron mounts with encoders, because I also used to have the 60 EC, is they like a lot less aggression and input from the guiding software. Okay. Because the mount's already trying to make the adjustments on its own based on its encoders. So it doesn't want to be told what to do as much. It just wants a little help to get there, a little nudge, but it doesn't want to be told,
It's like a marriage relationship.
It really is. It really is. You have to be very tactful with how you tell it what to do. Yeah, but it doesn't like a lot of aggression. I typically use about 25-30% in each axis with
that's low, yeah.
Very low. Yeah, very, very low. Okay. Yeah.
Well, Adam, hey, great talking to you. Likewise. Fantastic mounts, and I look forward to seeing you here every year.
Likewise. Always good seeing you and the family. Yeah.